Washington, D.C. hadn't felt this kind of electric tension since the 2016 election. The nation was on edge. After his stunning return to the White House in 2024, President Donald J. Trump wasn't wasting a second. The establishment expected fireworks. What they didn't expect was the cold, calculated storm Trump was about to unleash with his most unconventional ally yet, Elon Musk. Pelosi, now out of office but still deeply embedded in the Democratic machine, remained a vocal critic of the Trump administration. Her influence lingered in the media, the donor class, and even foreign policy circles. But even she didn't see it coming, because the real play wasn't on the House floor or cable news. It was in the boardrooms of America's most powerful companies and behind the doors of the Oval Office. For months, whispers floated around that Trump and Musk were in talks. Most dismissed it as rumor. After all, Musk had publicly criticized both parties in the past. But Trump saw something in Musk that reminded him of himself. A disruptor, an outsider who didn't follow rules. And Musk saw an opportunity. Finally, a president who wasn't afraid to blow up bureaucracy for innovation's sake. On a chilly March morning, the press exploded. In a surprise joint announcement at the White House, Trump and Musk unveiled the American Sovereignty and Innovation Pact, a multi-pronged executive partnership between the federal government and Musk's empire, including SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink, and Starlink. But it wasn't just any deal. It was the most aggressive economic and technological realignment in modern American history. At the podium, Trump stood tall, his voice brimming with swagger. This is about winning again. And folks, with Elon, we're not just building back. We're building bigger, faster, and American. Musk followed, dressed simply in a black blazer and no tie. This is about ending the gridlock, he said. We've got rockets sitting idle while regulators debate paperwork. That ends now. Pelosi watched the press conference from her home in San Francisco. Her expression remained unreadable. But inside, she was fuming. She knew what this meant. Trump and Musk had just declared war. Not just on red tape, but on everything she'd spent decades constructing. The delicate balance of government oversight, environmental controls, labor protections, and perhaps most importantly, democratic influence over Silicon Valley. Back in D.C., aides scrambled. Analysts were stunned. Even Fox News hosts seemed momentarily speechless. But the details were even more shocking. Trump was signing executive orders that effectively deputized Musk's companies as quasi-governmental entities. SpaceX would be given unprecedented access to federal launch sites, military-grade tech, and NASA infrastructure. Tesla would help restructure the nation's power grid with solar tech, bypassing old energy lobbies entirely. And Starlink, perhaps the most controversial, would begin replacing aging internet infrastructure in rural America, funded partially by redirected FCC budgets. Trump called it a beautiful, direct-to-consumer government. No middlemen. Pelosi called it something else, corporate authoritarianism. And while liberal pundits howled about regulatory overreach and unchecked capitalism, Trump's base erupted in celebration. Finally, they said, someone was smashing the system. But the true nightmare was only beginning. Pelosi, long considered a master tactician, knew this wasn't just a political stunt. Trump and Musk weren't just shifting power, they were erasing the old system entirely. And unless she could stop it, everything she had built, her legacy, her influence, would go up in flames. Nancy Pelosi had faced her share of political brawls. Impeachments, shutdowns, and enough scandals to fill volumes. But this was different. This was personal. The Trump-Musk alliance was more than just a headline. It was a bulldozer aimed at the very foundation of Washington's entrenched bureaucracy, and Pelosi's carefully constructed network of allies, donors, and institutional influence was directly in its path. She picked up the phone and immediately dialed her most trusted operatives in California, New York, and D.C. We're not going to let them privatize the entire country, she snapped. Within 48 hours, Pelosi had convened a private strategy session with some of the most powerful names in the Democratic ecosystem. Governors, tech donors, legacy media heads, and even a few Republican never-Trumpers. The mood was grim. What exactly are we dealing with here? Asked one former senator. Pelosi leaned forward, her voice tight. We're watching the construction of a shadow government, run out of Tesla factories, SpaceX launch pads, and Neuralink labs. And every day we sit on our hands, they're rewriting the rules of the game. Across town, at the White House, President Trump wasn't wasting time. Inside the Roosevelt Room, Trump sat with Elon Musk and his inner circle. Charts, models, and holographic maps of infrastructure projects flickered on massive touchscreens. They were already deploying the first wave of initiatives under the American Sovereignty and Innovation Pact. "We'll start with Middle America," Trump declared. "Ohio, Kansas, Wisconsin, they've been forgotten long enough. Let's give them Starlink, Tesla battery farms, new jobs, new schools. And Elon's tech. None of this outdated garbage. We're building smart towns." Musk nodded. "We'll have beta test communities ready by fall. AI-managed infrastructure, satellite internet, solar-powered everything. But we'll need full autonomy to bypass state interference." Trump grinned. "Done. I'll make it happen." By that weekend, Starlink towers were being erected in rural counties without so much as a permit from state-level officials. Governors protested. Environmental groups filed lawsuits. And Pelosi? She was in front of every microphone she could find. "They are outsourcing democracy to billionaires," she thundered on MSNBC. "What Trump and Musk are doing is not innovation. It's a hostile takeover of public policy." But Pelosi's speeches were landing flat with a large portion of the public. Why? Because the results were already showing. In a small Kentucky town plagued by internet blackouts for years, kids were logging on to virtual classes with lightning speed. In Nebraska, Tesla truck factories broke ground, hiring hundreds on the spot. Towns that had been ignored for decades suddenly felt. Seen. Trump's base grew louder. Elon's fanboys grew prouder. And even moderate Americans, exhausted by years of political stalemate, began to ask themselves, maybe this is the future. Still, Pelosi wasn't done. She sent her operatives into high gear. Behind the scenes, she pushed key Democratic senators to initiate emergency hearings. She leaned on journalists to dig for dirt. Anything that could stall this juggernaut. Conflict of interest? Backroom deals? Environmental negligence? One breakthrough came from a whistleblower inside the Department of Energy. The individual alleged that Tesla had already received advanced knowledge of future federal tax credits for solar expansion. A move that could constitute insider dealing if proven that it was the crack Pelosi needed. That night, CNN broke the exclusive. Tesla tied to leaked energy credit plans. Whistleblower suggests favoritism in Trump-Musk deal. The next morning, Pelosi held a press conference on Capitol Hill. "This is what I've been warning you about," she said with barely disguised rage. "This administration is handing over classified policy directives to their tech partners. This is corruption at the highest level." But instead of denial, Trump leaned into it. Hard. During an impromptu press gathering on the South Lawn, he waved off the allegations. "Of course, we're working closely with Elon. He's smarter than anyone in Congress. And unlike them, he actually gets things done. Maybe Pelosi's just mad we didn't invite her." Reporters laughed. The crowd cheered. That's when Trump added the final twist. "Next week, we're announcing the Freedom Factory Initiative, a nationwide plan to relocate critical manufacturing away from China and into rural America, built and managed by Musk's team. No more foreign dependency. We're bringing it all home." The markets reacted instantly. Tesla stock soared. Pelosi's allies on Wall Street, furious, because Trump had just outflanked them again. But Pelosi had one last card to play. A deeply buried file, locked in a folder marked Project Genesis, had just resurfaced. And it could be the weapon she needed to turn this political blitzkrieg into a full-scale collapse. For years, Project Genesis was considered a dead relic, a classified research initiative quietly buried during the Obama administration. It was a fusion of big data, predictive AI, and biometric monitoring systems, initially pitched as a national security tool to preempt domestic threats. But the implications had been too dangerous, even for a government that dabbled in surveillance. Congress shut it down, or so they thought. What Pelosi's team discovered sent chills down her spine. Buried in a series of obscure procurement memos, Project Genesis had been reactivated, not by the Department of Homeland Security or the NSA, but by Neuralink under a new name, CerebralNet. and it was greenlit under the authority of the American Sovereignty and Innovation Pact, signed directly by President Trump. Jesus, one aide whispered, eyes scanning the documents. They've got real-time behavioral modeling, neural feedback loops, pattern forecasting of civil unrest. Pelosi snapped, this isn't just privatized government. It's pre-crime, Orwellian, but with branding. In a locked conference room deep inside the Capitol, Pelosi briefed a handful of top Democratic lawmakers. They're going to use this tech to control the narrative, target opposition, and steer public opinion. This goes way beyond Musk building cars or launching rockets. This is surveillance on steroids, and Trump's using it like a campaign machine. Meanwhile, in a Neuralink facility in Austin, Musk was watching a live demo. A simulated environment showed how cerebral net could predict and respond to human behavior with uncanny accuracy. The system could flag emotional volatility in online posts, map sentiment shifts across populations, and generate preemptive engagement strategies. Can this work during an election cycle? Musk asked. A lead engineer nodded. It already is. Back in DC, Trump was loving the numbers. His approval ratings were soaring among demographics no one expected: working-class Latinos, young suburban men, and even a small but growing portion of disillusioned liberals. Behind it all was an invisible engine. CerebralNet, quietly shaping messaging through social media, ad placement, and predictive voter outreach. Pelosi moved fast. She leaked the files anonymously to a Pulitzer-winning journalist at The Atlantic. The next morning, America woke up to a bombshell headline. Trump and Musk launched digital surveillance network under guise of innovation pact. The public reaction was immediate and split. Civil liberties groups erupted in protest. The ACLU filed an emergency lawsuit. Progressive lawmakers called for congressional investigations. But in red states and swing counties, something strange happened. The more the media screamed Orwellian, the more Trump supporters rallied behind him. Pelosi's just scared of the future, one viral TikTok user said. Trump and Elon are doing what nobody else would, cleaning up the mess. By the end of the week, protests had broken out in front of Neuralink's offices and the Capitol alike. A divided nation was becoming more fractured by the hour. And then came the Senate hearing. Pelosi, using her remaining political capital, had pushed through an emergency subpoena. Musk would be required to testify publicly on the scope, legality, and ethical implications of CerebralNet. The hearing was broadcast live with millions tuning in. The chamber was packed when Musk entered, calm and deliberate. Dressed in his trademark black and white, he sat with an unshakable smirk, as if he knew what questions were coming, and already had answers prepared. Senator Elizabeth Warren opened. Mr. Musk, do you admit that CerebralNet is designed to monitor American citizens' behavior in real time? Musk leaned forward. No more than Google does. The difference is, our goal isn't to sell ads. It's to improve lives. Smart infrastructure, responsive policy, anticipatory service delivery. That's the future. Senator Klobuchar followed up. So you don't see a problem with feeding behavioral data to an administration you openly support? Musk shrugged. If the previous administration had asked for help, they'd have gotten it too. They didn't. The hearing was a chess match. Pelosi sat watching from the gallery, burning with frustration. Musk was a step ahead at every turn. His cool demeanor, paired with the dazzling potential of his technology, was winning over even skeptical centrists. Then, Trump tweeted mid-hearing, Elon's crushing it. Pelosi and the radical Dems want to stop American progress because they can't control it. Sad. The tweet had over 3 million likes by the time Musk left the stand. But Pelosi wasn't giving up. That night, she appeared on live TV to issue a direct call. This isn't about Trump. It's about unchecked tech monopolies taking control of our democracy. If we don't fight now, we may never get another chance. But she didn't realize the real bombshell wasn't the tech. It was how it was being financed. And that revelation would bring the political war to its boiling point. While America argued over CerebralNet and surveillance, a different kind of firestorm was brewing behind closed doors. A financial one. Pelosi's team had flagged a curious discrepancy in the flow of federal funds. Billions, yes, billions, had been rerouted from dormant Pentagon projects. unused pandemic relief reserves, and environmental impact grants into a new, rapidly expanding financial entity called the American Strategic Renewal Fund, ASRF. It wasn't publicly listed. It didn't appear in any budget discussions. But it was real. The paperwork was dizzying, but the trail was clear. ASRF was being used to funnel federal dollars into Elon Musk's companies under the guise of national infrastructure and innovation incentives. It had the appearance of a public-private partnership, but functioned like a high-speed investment pipeline. And at the top of that pipeline, Jared Kushner, Peter Thiel, and a shadowy advisory board that included former intelligence officials and defense contractors. All with close ties to the Trump administration. Pelosi's face went white as the realization set in. This isn't just about innovation, she said during an emergency intelligence committee meeting. They've built a state-sponsored investment empire, and they're using it to consolidate power outside traditional oversight. What made it worse? The returns. Under ASRF, Tesla had already seen a 300% profit increase from energy grid partnerships alone. SpaceX contracts with the Department of Defense had doubled. Starlink was on track to replace government-owned communication networks in 12 states. All funded not by Wall Street, but by taxpayer money rebranded under strategic renewal. But that wasn't the end point. One of Pelosi's cybersecurity advisors uncovered something even darker. A clause buried deep in the ASRF charter. It stated that participating corporations, i.e., Musk's empire, would have exclusive rights to data gathered through federally funded projects. That included behavioral trends, infrastructure diagnostics, even biometrics from Neuralink testing centers. It was a goldmine. And it was legal, thanks to an executive order Trump had quietly signed 3 weeks earlier. By now, the public was waking up. Independent journalists and whistleblower forums began reporting on the fund. Hashtags like #privatizedpower and #ASRFscam trended on X, formerly Twitter. But for every outraged critic, there were 10 supporters flooding the replies with, "At least they're doing something. Why didn't Obama or Biden fix this? We finally have real progress." Pelosi moved fast again. She called a primetime press conference to break down ASRF in plain language. Behind her were visual boards, arrows, cash flow charts, tax reports, and photos of billionaires smiling behind podiums stamped with the presidential seal. "This is not innovation, it's exploitation," she declared. "We are witnessing the rise of a parallel government, funded by the public, managed by private hands, and answerable to no one. This is the greatest economic heist in modern history." The next day, the White House responded. Not with a counter-press conference, but with a national address, Trump style. Standing in front of a crowd of cheering supporters in Texas, Trump thundered, "Nancy Pelosi is panicking because her era is over. We are investing in Americans. We're creating jobs. We're ending China's grip on our economy. And if Elon Musk makes a few bucks while saving the country, I say, God bless him." The crowd erupted. Then came the kicker. "And today, I'm signing the American Renewal Act, which makes ASRF a permanent fixture of our future. The money doesn't go to bureaucrats. It goes to you." The legislation passed in a late-night congressional session with help from a surprising number of moderate Democrats who were swayed by the economic impact reports pouring in from their home states. Trump's poll numbers surged. Musk's companies were labeled national strategic assets. And Pelosi, she was being painted by right-wing media as a jealous relic of a broken era. But she wasn't done. She had one final move, something risky, something radical. She quietly reached out to the European Union and several foreign watchdog organizations. If America's institutions wouldn't intervene, maybe the international community would. And as global headlines began flashing, EU investigates Trump-Musk axis over alleged global market manipulation. Trump knew. The gloves weren't just off. They were being thrown across continents. By the time the European Union announced a formal inquiry into ASRF and its international implications, the global media had split into two camps. One hailing the Trump-Musk machine as the birth of a new techno-American age, and the other calling it the greatest consolidation of corporate power ever sanctioned by a sitting U.S. president. The inquiry focused on monopolistic practices, the use of AI to steer public discourse, and massive data collection across borders, all of which fell into gray areas under U.S. law but triggered red flags abroad. Pelosi saw her opening. Standing before a sea of press in Brussels, she gave a fiery speech rarely seen from an American political figure on foreign soil. What we are witnessing is not leadership, it is conquest through convenience. The privatization of surveillance. The outsourcing of national responsibilities. This is not the America we promised the world. It echoed worldwide. Canada and Germany issued joint letters requesting formal clarification from the State Department. NATO intelligence leaders warned that if Musk-controlled satellite networks were being leveraged politically, it could destabilize alliances. But as world leaders debated, America surged forward. Musk's new line of AI-operated infrastructure, under the Atlas program, was being deployed in 22 states. Bridges rebuilt. Roads maintained by drone-operated repair fleets. Smart grids rerouted energy in real time. Homeless shelters were constructed by automated Tesla bricklayers in record time. The optics? Impeccable. And Trump knew it. In a massive rally in Orlando, Trump stood shoulder to shoulder with Elon Musk on a platform built in the shape of the U.S. flag. Giant screens displayed before and after shots of revitalized towns, happy families, and graphs showing skyrocketing employment in once-forgotten regions. They said we couldn't do it, Trump declared. They said we were a threat. But we're the future. And the people are with us. The crowd chanted back, Trump and Musk! Trump and Musk! Meanwhile, Pelosi's team worked frantically in the background. The international route wasn't yielding the pressure she'd hoped. The markets weren't crashing. If anything, they were stabilizing thanks to the influx of innovation projects. And that's when the final blow landed, not against Trump or Musk, but against Pelosi herself. An anonymous leak. Many suspected from inside ASRF, surfaced documents showing that Pelosi's husband's investment firm had once quietly bid for AI infrastructure contracts through European subsidiaries, only to be rejected in favor of Musk's companies. The implication: conflict of interest, political motivation. The right-wing media tore into it. Fox News ran a 24-hour ticker. Pelosi attacked Trump-Musk deal while seeking same contracts? The House Ethics Committee opened a review. The DNC distanced itself. Donors pulled back. Suddenly, Pelosi was on the defensive, fielding questions not about innovation or democracy, but about her own motives. Her final attempt came in the form of a legal injunction to freeze ASRF's operations, citing pending international legal review and ethical implications. But it was too little, too late. The Supreme Court declined to hear it. And Trump? He wasted no time. At a White House press conference just 2 days later, he held up a massive gold-embossed folder stamped with the presidential seal. With Musk by his side, he signed the American Sovereign Innovation Charter, permanently institutionalizing the ASRF model, designating Musk's ecosystem as a strategic partner of the U.S. government. This is how you win the 21st century, Trump said. Not by playing politics, but by building the future. And with that, the Trump-Musk alliance was no longer a controversial partnership, it was law. A year later, the landscape had transformed. 5G was old news. Starlink 3.0 blanketed even the remotest mountains. Electric vehicles were government-subsidized nationwide. Neuralink clinics had opened in 7 states, offering enhanced cognitive assistance to veterans and the disabled. And Musk's AI handled infrastructure, traffic flow, and emergency response in real time across a dozen test cities. Was it still America? That depended on who you asked. Some called it a techno-utopia. Others called it a silent coup. But one thing was clear. Trump and Musk had outmaneuvered the establishment, rewrote the rulebook, and made Pelosi's political machine obsolete. Nancy Pelosi retired 6 months after the final bill passed. She left with a legacy of resistance, but a sobering lesson about the evolving nature of power in the 21st century. Because in this new America, power no longer came from votes or speeches. It came from data, speed, vision, and the will to act when others hesitated. And when the gloves came off, it wasn't the loudest voice that won. It was the one who built something no one could ignore.